Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us and welcome to How to Rock B2B Engagement in the Age of the Customer, the second webinar of our B2B Engagement Fest today. We have a great deal of valuable information, insights, and engagement tactics that our next speaker will be sharing, and I'll introduce him shortly. Very quickly, just a couple of notes before we begin. For everyone out there, we'll be recording today's webinar, so a link to the recorded version and slides will be sent out to all attendees. Everyone will be on mute during the webinar, but please do feel free to send in questions for our speaker via the webinar chat area. Now, we are really excited to have this speaker with us today. He is Mathew Sweezey, Principal of Marketing Insights at Salesforce. And for those of you who have either heard him speak before or who have heard him live and on stage, you know everyone's in for a treat because no one rocks B2B engagement like Mathew Sweezey. So let's get rolling and enjoy the presentation.
Hey, thanks everybody for joining us today. We're going to start with this slide real quick. It's a safe harbor statement. We are a publicly traded company, so please make any purchasing decisions based off of current technology and not any forward-looking statements that we might make. Now, just to give you a little bit of updates on who this guy is talking to you, well, this is me. There's my blue face on the right-hand side. I'm Principal of Marketing Insights at Salesforce. So primarily what I do is a lot of research, writing, speaking, mostly on the topic of marketing in various forms. But anyways, there's some publications you can see that I write for. And also, feel free to follow me. It's M. Sweezey. And that's a great, it's Mathew Sweezey. I thought it was fun. And then one day I figured out that it's Miss Wheezy. So feel free to just tweet at me and Miss Wheezy. I wasn't supposed to rhyme. All right, so here we go. Let's get started. So let's first off talk about what is engagement. And engagement really, in my belief, has four key things that have to exist for someone to be engaged with. Now, you need to think about this in terms of you are not just sending one thing to this person. This person is being bombarded with lots of things. So what is going to make them engage with yours versus others? And there's four levels. First off, it has to be available. If you can't have something there, there is nothing there to be engaged with. So it's pretty self-explanatory. The second is personal. Once there are lots of things that are available, the person will then choose the one that is most personal to them at that point in time. Now, personal is going to be a large range of different things. It could be personal to the person, a product that they're interested in, a stage in the buying cycle, the persona. There's lots of different things that could be personal. The next layer would be authentic. So if there's lots of different things that are targeted to that person, they're going to choose the one that is most authentic. And then finally, on top of that, then would be purpose. So the person is going to choose the thing that is available, that is personal, authentic, and then purposeful. And purposeful means helping them fulfill their purpose at that point in time. And there are lots of different ways to look at purpose, but just kind of keep that in mind as to that is what really is engagement. It has to have those four aspects to drive some type of engagement. Now this then brings up the question, well then what is nurturing? Well, nurturing is automated engagement. Right? And there's really four pieces to nurturing that we're going to talk about. And there's the start, there's the channels, the timing, and then how the programs end. And we're going to walk through each one of these things specifically and kind of look at how this journey evolves and how we actually need to create these different steps to the journey. Now, we're going to start at the start. Now, when we look at a journey has to begin. And we call these things triggers, right? Because when we're talking about nurturing, these are automated journeys. Now these triggers, really, there's three types of triggers that can exist to add somebody onto a nurturing program. There are behavioral triggers. Now these are where a person expresses some type of behavioral action. This could be they go to a specific page, they use a specific search term, they may have not been back to the website in a certain amount of time. Right? These are things that the person expresses. They are behaviors of an individual. The second are manual ways. Now, this is a manual way. So you may say, I as a marketer want to take this segment of my population and I want to nurture them in a very specific way. That would be, you would go in and say, I want to find everybody who's the VP of marketing in the state of Georgia, and I want to add them to this very specific drip program or nurturing program. That is a manual trigger. The third is a reactional trigger. This is usually off of data that exists inside of your database. Let me give you a couple examples. So let's say that you pass a lead over to sales, but that lead status doesn't change from the status that you sent it over as. So let's say that anytime you qualify a lead, you pass it over to sales, And then you have the lead status as open. And your process may be that when sales talks to that prospect, they then change the status to engagement. So if that status has not changed to engagement, we know that that person has not been engaged with. So we then may have a trigger that automatically puts that person onto a nurturing program. That is reactional to an internal process that is not based on a behavior, and it is not a manual process. Those are really the three types of ways that somebody, first off, is going to get added to a nurturing program. Now, there's also a lot of other different things inside of these triggers, and I want to dig into some more nuanceical types of things, right? Video triggers. One of the things that you need to keep in mind is that this big world of marketing, of actions that you have available to you, should also include video. You can have the ability to actually see how much a person has watched on a specific video and then run automations based off of that, right? This could be if the person has watched this video all the way through, then nurture them or do this type of action with them. There's web triggers. You can have different web pages have different types of actions, such as if one page is a specific product, you may then want to nurture them based on that product that they're interested in. And those are where you then integrate with your website. Another type of trigger is an action, but really think of non-actions as an action, such as if this email wasn't opened, that is just as much of an action as if the email was opened, right? So kind of keep those things into mind as different types of triggers that you can use. Now, let's talk about the channels that we nurture on. This is very important. And in today's presentation, we're really going to talk about two specific channels. One is on-site nurture and one is an email nurture, right? So the on-site nurture, this is the top left screen. These are dynamic website blocks that actually change to match the person. Now let me kind of give you a quick scenario. Let me ask you a basic question. How many pages do you have on your website? Right? Just throw that number up in your head. How many of those pages have content? Right? Let's say a percentage. 90% of those pages probably have content. Now, what is the average number of pages that a person goes to on your website? It's probably no higher than 4. The average, when I look at 1 million page views in the B2B scenario, the average is 1.7, which means a person will not even make it to a second page. So how do we get somebody to engage with content on our website, and how do we move them through that B2B buying journey? Well, it's using that website to dynamically nurture them. So these website blocks have the same ability to nurture somebody just as an email does, right? And then the basic is email nurturing. This is kind of where the whole idea of nurturing started with. And this is kind of what most people believe and think of as nurturing. So we'll kind of look at this one more specifically. The next aspect to nurturing, which is very important, is the timing. There's two types of timing. There's the time in between engagements, and then there's the total time of an experience. Now, here's some rules of thumb I want you to kind of keep in mind with timing. We'll get more specific because time is really specific to the campaign itself. But in general, there's a couple of things, right? 3 is what I would call probably the shortest amount of time in between two types of email engagement. 6, I'd say, is the average, and 45 is the longest. So that's kind of a general rule of thumb, right? 3 is pretty much if you hit somebody, they don't open an email, and you send an email 3 days later, that's not too intrusive. If they're really into something, that could be very helpful. 6 really is kind of a catch-all. It says, all right, if I send an email, and then I send another email, that it guarantees I don't send 2 emails in the same business week, hence a business week only has 5 days. And then 45 is a month and a half. If you're not keeping up with a prospect or anybody every month and a half at a bare minimum, there is no way that you can maintain a basic relationship. So it's kind of the basic idea, 3, 6, and 45. Total time we'll talk about in specific, but really it's campaign by campaign, and we're going to diagram a bunch of different campaigns as we go and kind of show you how time is different in each one of those campaigns. And then finally, it is very specific to you. So let me give you a couple examples. If you have a shorter buying cycle, you're going to have shorter time pauses in between each engagement, just because you can't span them out over a long time because that time doesn't exist in your buying cycle. Conversely, if you have a very long buying cycle, maybe 9 months to 2 years, your time in between engagements can be a lot longer because that's going to be more natural to that process that buyer is going through. There's a couple of ideas to kind of keep in mind with timing, but we'll also get much more specific as we go. And then finally, how do we end these nurturing programs? This is always a question that people ask me, and it's also something not a lot of people do very well. So let's give a couple of tips on this. I love the "I can't quit you." What is that? The Notebook comment? Yes, I threw that in there for everybody. Yes, get a laugh out of that one. All right. So first off, move somebody to a new campaign. We're going to go through a lot of examples where a campaign has a very specific goal. If that goal is not reached, then move them to another campaign and have a new goal. Right? It's very basic, and we'll show that later. There's the idea of a breakup email. Right? This is a phenomenal technique that's really come about probably, I'd say in the past couple of years. It's been pretty pervasive. But this is where the last email in a campaign would say, hey, I've tried to reach you. I've sent some really cool stuff. You don't like any of it. I'm going to break up with you. Or should I keep talking to you? It's a pretty straight up, straightforward, is this working for you? If not, let's move on, right? It's actually pretty effective, and you'll see a varying different types of results, because if the person really doesn't want to talk to you, it behooves you to get them off that list. But if they do want to talk to you, they will tell you. And then it allows you to say, hey, now we're going to keep in communication, and I know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing with this person, right? So it's actually pretty important. The next idea is to notify sales. If you are nurturing somebody and they are in the sales workflow, right? So we're taking them down a sales nurturing campaign, and that campaign ends, well, then notify sales so that they know what to do, right? So let's say that sales has been nurturing somebody for 90 days. Well, at the end of that 90-day journey, notify that sales prospect so they can then take the next best action. They can say, oh, I need to add this person to another campaign, or I need to maybe place a phone call, or I need to kill that deal completely and move on. And then finally is just mark that thing dead. This is one thing most marketers do not do, because we hold this idea of the email very high in esteem, right? If the email is not converting, if the person doesn't want to talk to you, you're getting no engagement, having that person in your database honestly is not doing you any good other than just bumping up a superficial number of how big is my email database, right? So just kill it out. Kill that email out of your database, mark it as dead, move on, right? It's not doing you any good. So those are some really good ways to kind of end this. With all those things in mind, I really want to kind of walk you through what really best-in-class nurturing looks like and what it is, right? So we're going to kind of walk through this step by step. So first thing, you need to understand that nurturing is really modern psychology. So I'm going to kind of show you some modern psychology. But first off, I've got to show this to you specifically. You have to understand this, so let me test you. All right, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you do A or do you do B? Right? How do you manage your email inbox? Do you get in there in the morning and open the first email, start to scan it, decide to continue reading it or delete it, move on to the next one, open it, start to scan it, decide to continue reading it or delete it, and work your way email by email all the way through your inbox? Or do you do B? Do you open up your email inbox, scan all the subject lines, delete all the crap, and work on the rest? The answer is B. You just said B. Everyone on this call just said B, right? I've asked this question to thousands of people all over the world, and everybody all over the world does the same thing. Now, this is called heuristics. You have trained yourself how to manage a large amount of information, and this is what you've taught yourself. We disqualify before we qualify. Because there's so much information and so much of it is irrelevant, we get out of that irrelevant stuff out of the way first, and then we work on what's left. This is very important to you as an email marketer to understand. Why? Simple. So you don't get disqualified. If you don't understand how people actually manage their email inbox, there is no way that you can actually be effective at email marketing. All right, now let's take this to the second level. Let's talk about how you engage with content. And this is also very specific to what I call a considered purchase. All B2B processes are considered purchases, and there are a lot of high-end ticketed B2C items that are also considered purchases. But let's just take into consideration, how do you download content? Now, do you do A? Do you go online, ask Google a question, find a piece of content, log offline, read that content, go back online, find another piece of content, log offline, consume that content, and continue? Or do you do B? Do you go online, download a ton of content, log off, and hope to read it? The answer is, again, B. Do you see the theme here? I'm saying it's always B. All right, that's just a joke. But anyways, what you do is you batch research. Now think about this. It is expedient and efficient for you to find everything very quickly all at one time, because it's all there. You've done a search, so now you have 15 different things that are exactly what you want. Each time you go and engage with something, then there's going to be a pop-up showing you something else that's very relevant. So it's trained you to then batch research. Now, if you graph this batch research out, it looks like the following chart, right? There's a horizontal line. That is your average engagement with content on a daily basis, right? Then there's this squiggly line, and there's 3 peaks to that line. This is very important. There's 3 peaks because when I did the research asking B2B buyers, how do you go and research products before you buy them? They told me they go back to Google on average of 2 to 3 times before they want to talk to a salesperson. So these are the 3 stages of engagement that you as a marketer have control over. After this, we then pass it over to sales. This is very important, and let me tell you why this is important. Let me give you the story about this girl at a party. Right, I'm at a wedding, and I get seated at the singles table. I was obviously single, and so I sit there and I start talking to this person next to me. And I was like, hey, so, what's the first question you ask when you have no clue about somebody? Very simple, what do you do? So I said, what do you do? And she goes, oh, I do email marketing. I was like, well, that's great. I know a little bit about email marketing. And so we start to chat. And I was like, so what email marketing tool do you use? And before I could say anything, before really anything else could happen, this blurted out of her mouth. I use ExactTarget and I hate it. And I was like, well, that's very awkward because I work for ExactTarget. So how can I help you? And she says, well, it doesn't do good enough segmentation, right? Let's just take a backstory side note. Microsoft literally had just used ExactTarget to launch Office 365 to do real-time segmentation by using literally a supercomputer to look at millions of bytes of data in real time. Right? So segmentation is not something that this tool cannot do. It actually does it better than anything else in the world. So I was like, what do you mean by segmentation? There's obviously something going on with the definition here that we don't mean the same thing. She says, anytime somebody opts out of an email, I want to remove them from one list and add them to another list. And I said, well, that's your problem right there. This is a terminology thing. That is not segmentation. That is an automation. You need a marketing automation tool to do that. No. I need better segmentation. I literally just written marketing automation for dummies, and it published like 2 weeks before this. I wasn't going to be like, okay. I just said, all right, let's move on. So I was like, so what else do you do? Let's just move on with the conversation. Point being, if I sent her an email, I know her problem, I know her pain point, I know the solution that is best for her. I know everything. But if I send her an email that said Pardon is the best marketing automation platform, will she open that email? The answer is no. She will disqualify it and then delete it, right? So she is in stage 1 of these 3 stages, right? So knowing where a person is in a stage is extremely important to nurturing. The second thing you need to realize is you cannot drag a person through all 3 stages. So this idea of a nurturing campaign to take a person from downloading a white paper and then popping out a hot lead at the end is totally a lie. That does not work. And if you're doing that, you're doing it wrong, right? So let me show you what you should be doing, and this is the math behind why you should be doing it. The goal of a nurturing campaign is to move somebody to the next stage. That is, if the goal is lead generation, right? It's to move them from stage to stage. You can't pull them through. I'll teach you techniques in this time of how we can expedite that process. Or the goal of nurturing is just to stay top of mind, just to keep up engagements and to make that easier so we can scale relationships. Those are the only goals of nurturing, right? So let me show you the 5 nurturing campaigns that you actually need to know. The first off is the 3-2-1 campaign. And I'm going to define this and get into it, but really it has very specific purposes. And I really want to pause real quick, and I want to ask you something, right? I want you to think about nurturing as plays, right? A play is broken down into very specific things. And let me give you a scenario. Who's a sports fan? Raise your hand. I really don't care about sports, but I know enough to give you this analogy, right? How many golf clubs does a PGA player have in their golf club, or excuse me, in their golf bag? I should say, how many are they allowed to have in their golf bag? The number is like 12 or 14. It's something very small, right? How many different pitches can an actual MLB pitcher throw? How many pitches are there for them to throw? The answer is about 12. There's only about 12 pitches that they can throw. There's not a whole lot. But now I want you to think about this. How many different pitches do they throw? How many different batters do they see? How many different scenarios are they in? And it's an infinite number, right? It's constantly growing. But they have very few plays that they can actually execute. I want you to think about nurturing the exact same way. Have a couple basic plays that you know how to use and then learn how to use them in combination And if you can do that, you can build nurturing programs for any scenario, right? But it's based on plays. So here are the 5 plays I really want you to kind of understand. The 3-2-1, the stage base, the sales drip, an onboarding drip, and a competitive drip. And I'm going to show you what these are, what they look like, and then how to combine these things together. So let's start off with the basic, the 3-2-1, right? Now, let me define 3-2-1. It's really simple. A, B, C, easy as 1, 2, 3. And then you flip it. So then it's 3-2-1, right? So why do we do this? Well, here's the scenario, and here's the goal, and here's why 3-2-1, why I designed it. So first off, let's say that you go to a trade show. What do you get when you come back from a trade show? You get this giant list of nothingness. You get a list of emails, and you've had people that drop by the booth. Some of them may be sales ready. You may have tried to mark them as hot, cold, or whatever with one of those scan doohickeys, but really all of that doesn't really work, right? So what you have is a list of people that you don't know what stage they're in. They may be interested, but at varying levels. So the first order of business is to identify which stage a person is in. This is called stage-based marketing. Once we can identify the stage the person is in, then we know what is relevant, and then we know our next steps. So first order of business, identify the stage. And that is what this program does. Now, this is how this program works. First off, you have 3 emails. You have an email highly targeted to stage 3. You have an email highly targeted to stage 2. And you have an email highly targeted to stage 1. Highly targeted means both subject line, copy, and call to action is tailored to that stage. Now, let me run through this really quickly. Stage 3 emails, the subject line. It can include your brand, and it can include your keyword, such as Pardot is the best marketing automation platform. My brand and my keyword, right? The copy may say, hey, here's a buyer's guide you might want to check out, right? That is copy talking about the actual product, and a call to action that is a stage 3 call to action. So a person cares about the buyer's guide when they're about to make a short list, which is what stage 3 is. Stage 2, this is social proof. Have you seen how XYZ company was able to do XYZ, right? You're not talking about yourself, but you are talking about social proof, right? And then it may be links to a case study. Right? That's stage 2. Stage 1 does not use your brand, and it does not use your keyword. Thought you might like this. No joke, that is a killer subject line. Copy. Here's an article in Times Magazine I thought you might like about business writing. Right? It's evergreen. It's targeted to your demographic because all marketers write. And then that's a set. 3-2-1, that's a set. Here's the purpose. If I send you an email that's highly targeted to stage 3, highly targeted to stage 2, and highly targeted to stage 1, and you engage with one of them, you have just self-selected yourself into a stage and told me what stage you're in. Now, the reason we start with 3 and then move to 1 rather than go from 1 to 3 is because we only have a short period of time to pick the stage 3 people out. It's the shortest period of time in the entire life cycle. So we want to target that first. Because what if we wait 15 days? Well, then we missed people that were in stage 3, right? So that's kind of what happens. And then how do you exit them? Well, once they engage with anything, you remove them from this campaign and you add them to a stage-based nurturing campaign. Now, I do want to give a quick case study on this 3-2-1 technique. Cornell, which is the online education university of Cornell University, has been using this technique, and they now convert 50% of all sales qualified leads who are nurtured by this campaign into new customers, right? So it is extremely powerful for a lot of people. Once they engage with the stage, we add them to the stage-based campaign that is specific to what they've engaged with, right? And here's what it looks like. You've got it stage specific. So if they engage with stage 2 email, we then take them on a stage 2 nurturing campaign. Right? Now, here's a couple of things. Copy, keep your copy short. 80% of your copy is not going to get read, so cut it out. Right? Calls to action need to be relevant to the stage. In stage 2, I'm a big fan of social proof. Timing. Feel free to mix up the timing, as you can see on the right-hand side. Maybe 3 days, then maybe 7 days, then maybe 9 days. Don't do the same time all the time, because then that email is going to come at the same time on the same day. Right? Mix it up, because that's natural, that's human. Right? It's pretty basic to kind of understand. Right? The next I really want to dig into is this idea of a sales nurture. Right? So let's look at this sales nurture. Now, these are a very specific type of nurturing campaign, and they have some very specific things that you have to do if you want to get them utilized. First off, go to your best salespeople, the best, right? Not necessarily the ones that sell the most, not the cockiest, but the ones that everybody respects and everyone wants to follow. And typically, they are probably going to be the best in terms of selling anyways. Use their templates. Ask them, sit down with them and say, hey, we want to build a nurturing campaign, and tell them what you want to do it for. Say, we want to build a nurturing campaign for this scenario. We're going to pass you a lead. Sometimes those leads don't want to talk to you right away. We want to give you the ability to click a button and then not have to do anything, but stay in front of that prospect over the next 90 days. And they're going to say, holy crap, hell yeah, let's do that. And say, but for us to do that, we want to see what emails you use in these kind of scenarios currently. And then get their emails. Ask them why they send them. Ask them which ones they've tried. Ask them what they've found that works. Right? They have done some amazing things, and you may not know this, but they are really good at email. You got to remember, these people's job is to get people to engage with them. Right? They're pros at getting engagement at this stage. Ask them. Then the next thing you need to ask them is their cadence. Right? How often do you follow up? What is your follow-up process? They have a defined process if they are good, I promise you. When I was a salesperson, it was 2-2-12. I'd call and leave a voicemail. I'd then wait 2 days. I'd call back, but I wouldn't leave a voicemail and I wouldn't send an email. Then I'd wait 12 days and do the process over again. The next thing you need to understand about sales nurturing programs is how these emails are written. Salespeople do not code HTML. Your emails in a sales nurturing program must only be rich text. Rich text is a form of HTML for all you smart people out there, but it does not use any type of formatting at all. It is just typing right into a WYSIWYG. And then remember, keep them very short and very pointed. Understand that they are here to help reinforce a relationship. They are not here to sell anything. They should not be promotional. They literally should just say, hey, haven't talked to you in a while, thought you might enjoy this. Or just saw this, thought you'd enjoy it, yada, yada, yada. Right? Short and pointed. Here's a couple of other things. When you do these nurturing programs, the goal here is to make them easy. So have 3 different programs to start. And these programs are very specific, right? Have a 60-day no contact drip. What this means is if you pass a lead over and sales has not contacted this person, they can click a button and add this person to a drip that will then stay in front of that person for 60 days that they couldn't get in front of. Right? The next, a 90-day cold lead drip. Let's say sales has been working this lead and all of a sudden they go cold. Well, sales now has the option to add a person to a program that is specific to that scenario. And then finally, competitive. Let's say you pass a lead over and they are now competitive, right? We know they currently have a solution that is a competitor of ours. We need to then have a very special type of program that we use for those scenarios, right? So start with 3 scenarios. It makes it very easy to create. The next thing is you'll have to train people on what these things are and how to use them, right? So it's pretty basic. You have to train people. Right? You can't just give them these things and expect them to know how to innately use them. They require training. The next is a pilot team, right? Make sure you start this off with a pilot team. Take those 3 best salespeople and let them pilot the program. Why the 3 best? Because when they use it and they see success, everyone else wants to be like the best, and they will then use these programs. If you do not do this, your sales nurturing programs will not be used. Point blank, right? Content. This is not a lot about first-party content. A lot of this should be third-person content, third-party content, articles in other industry publications. If you want to use Gartner Magic Quadrants, I don't know if I would or not, try to keep this smaller. Maybe thought leadership content from other people, right? This is relational content. This is not salesy content. And then all of this will then get buy-in. But remember, this has to be easy. If you add anything to a salesperson's workflow, they will not do it, right? Think about all the things that we as an organization have tried to add, right? Remember how hard it was to get people to use a CRM. Remember how hard it is to get people to fill things in the CRM, right? These are all massive pain points. If you remove things from the salesperson's process, such as the need to follow up with somebody when they don't want to talk to you, they will do that as long as it is easy. As long as you remove work from their plate, they will do it. If you are adding work to their plate, they won't do it. So think about automatically adding people to these nurturing campaigns based on certain things, such as lead status, like I talked about earlier. What if lead status has not changed 10 days after I passed that lead over? Well, then automatically add that prospect to a sales nurturing program. Don't make the sales rep click a button. Simple as that, right? So you can work with them to build these things out. Now, inside of these sales nurturing programs, there is a competitive drip that I mentioned. I want to walk through this competitive drip because it's very specific and show you some of the aspects of that. First off, you can add somebody to this competitive drip by lots of different ways. It can be manual, it can be automated, it really just depends on how you want to do it. But there's some very specific things. First off, let's look at timing, right? Notice the time is very long, 45, 45, 15. That is a month and a half, a month and a half. If you have somebody that is using a competitive technology, the odds are there's only one time during the year that they can actually switch. And that is when their contract is coming up for renewal. All the rest of the time during the year, you should only be reaching out to them every month and a half just to stay in front of them, right? That is it. Now, when we do reach out to them, there's a couple of different types of reaching out that are very specific to competitive drip. Here's the types of content you should think of. First off, competitive positioning. If you have had any conversation with them, you're probably going to know what their pain points are. Or you just may have an idea of what their pain points are based on who they are, what technology they use, yada, yada, yada. The second type are links to reviews. Why are you better, and who are those people out there saying that? You're going to have, this person used to use XYZ technology, now they use us. If you know that person uses XYZ technology and you want them to switch over, send them that review. Say, hey, here's a great thing of somebody just like you I thought you might enjoy reading about. Right? It could be a tweet, it could be a review, it could be anything. It could be on any site. Next is contract renewal notice. If you know when the person's contract comes up, most contracts have clauses which say if you don't let us know 60 days before the end of this contract, it will auto-renew. Telling somebody that is very powerful because a lot of times people, one, don't know that, two, don't remember it. Right? So if you want to get them to switch out of that, you have to remind them of that because you know what? The company that's got them in that contract is not going to remind them of that because they want them to stay in that contract, right? This is your job to let them know. So if you can kind of keep those things in mind, those will be very helpful. The next is an onboarding nurturing program. Now, this is not necessarily specific to a sales process, but this is more specific to a couple of different things that marketing must keep in mind. Now, marketing has to be in charge of the life cycle of everything. Right? So let's talk about onboarding and a couple of different ways of onboarding. First off, onboarding should really take into account a couple of different things. New employees, new subscribers to your email list, new customers, or anything that's new. Walk them through because this is the most important and most critical time of the relationship. Your subject lines. Here's a very important trick. Keep them consistent, right? That way they can be easily searched for inside of an email box. Right? The copy should be action-based and very short, right? Here's some great actions on the right. Join this group, follow us on Twitter, watch this video. Calls to actions need to be one click and take them directly where they're supposed to go. And then timing. These are 1 day apart, right? Because this is a program that is trying to help somebody onboard, whether it is a partner, a new employee, a new subscriber, right? These are great aspects to do because if you have a new employee, there's a lot of stuff we need them to do. Right? Walk them through every day. Give them a task that takes no time to do. That's one click, and you'll start to see some amazing results. And this works for everybody. All right, now I'm going to hit you with 3 things to really take this email game to the next level. All right, so let's kind of walk through this pretty simply. First off, overall, these are the 3 things. Rich text, agile creation, and more content. These are the problems that most people have. How do I make enough emails? How do I make enough of these nurturing programs when I have to do other stuff in the day? And how do I find enough content to fill these nurturing programs? These are really the 3 biggest problems people have. So I'm going to walk you through this. Rich text versus HTML, right? So let's flip this one real quick. Here's what you need to know, right? Genuine emails work. Who's the best email marketer that you have in your company? It is not your email marketer. Listen to that. Your best email marketing comes from actual people inside your company. They send emails. The engagement rate from one-to-one emails outweighs any marketing email marketer's best email campaign, hands down. Why? Because they are human. The subject lines were written from one human to another, right? How can you disqualify an email so quickly? How can you disqualify an email that only has 100 bytes of data or 100 characters in a fraction of a second and know it's a marketing email? Because it was written by a marketer and it's very specific. That's how you can identify it. Right, here's a very quick example. John, here's a link in a video for our resource library. It was recorded by Jay Baird. That is it. I'm not explaining it. It's a simple email. There's a link to it. This email, this type of email will outperform your HTML emails on average of 2 to 4x. Here's the proof. I taught this to a top 10 bank, right? This is one of the top 10 banks in the world. And they split tested. They said, all right, we'll try you out. We'll try this rich text versus our HTML email. They did a split test where it was the exact same copy, exact same CTA, and exact same subject line, but they switched it to the rich text. They had a 4.35x increase in engagement, and were nice enough to send that back to me, so I can share that with you. Right? The second is agile creation. How do you create enough of these things when you really don't have enough time because you've got so much other stuff to do? Right? It's called agile. Right? This is all you need to know. First off, 3 is a magic number. There is a magic number. Yes, it is. It's a magic number. Somewhere in an ancient mystic trinity, you get 3 as a magic number. That's right, I just quoted Schoolhouse Rock for you. So here you go, start small. Start with 3 emails. That's all you need to make. This is how most people design a nurturing campaign. They sit back with their whole team, draw on a whiteboard and say, we're going to do this, we're going to send this, and they build this massive thing, take a picture of it, give it off to you, and then you have to build it. That is the worst way to build a nurturing campaign and stop it. Here's why it's horrible. Because you do not know what is going to happen. Start with 3 emails. You have plenty of time to then see how those emails perform and then build your next 3. This saves you time and will give you better results. This is called agile. Build it as you go based off of the learnings that you just found. Right? Simple. Right? Now let's talk about how to create more content. Here's really 3 easy ways to create more content. The idea is not to create more content, but to connect people with better content. Let me ask you this. Have you ever clicked on a retweet? The answer is yes. Yes, if you have Twitter, you've clicked on a retweet. What does a retweet specifically state up front? That this is content that this person did not create but is sharing. Think about that. You engaged with it. So why don't you think about email the same way? First off, tweets are content. Every tweet has a URL. If there's somebody saying something amazing about you, grab that URL, send that in an email. Say, hey, do you know John? This is something he said. I thought you might find it interesting. Direct them right to that tweet. That now connects them to another customer, another person, and to an amazing thing that was said that is non-biased, that does not come from you. Right? Very powerful. They're limitless. There's tons of them. And there's another piece of content. Next, evergreen. Think about articles and TED videos. Right? Anything that helps a person be better at their job. TED videos are great. Articles from magazines. These things are evergreen. They live forever. That's what evergreen means, by the way. Right? And then next is break it up. You probably have a lot of great content, but it's probably all congealed into one piece of white paper. Break that content up into the different stages that exist in your buying cycle and only have one piece of content hyper-tailored to one stage. That way, when someone engages with it, you know what stage they're in and you know what the next step should be. If you have all of that content into one email, you can't answer either of those questions, right? So then, let's wrap it up real quick. Conclusions. Nurturing is not one size fits all. There is not just one nurturing campaign that you can have. You need to know different plays and how to form them, use them together. Nurturing is very tactical. Learn the key campaigns and build from there. Understand why the 3-2-1 campaign works. Understand why you use it. Understand stage-based marketing. And then the ability to then, if you want to expand, use dynamic content in these exact same plays. And then finally, there's tons of content out there. The number one thing that I hear from people is, how do I create more content? And my response is, stop. Don't create any more content because it's probably going to be crap when you create it. There's plenty of great content that exists out there that is much more helpful and much better than anything you can create. And really connecting people to content is just as powerful as creating. Remember, the retweet. You do not have to create it for someone to engage with it and build a positive relationship. So from here, I just want to say thank you so much. And we're actually going to flip it over to some questions. We've had some questions come in. So let me kind of get to this first one. All right, so question number 1. We already have a pretty good engagement model in place for both marketing and sales, including basic nurturing programs used successfully by both our marketing team and sales team. There's always room for improvement, though. What can we do to take our efforts to the next level? Well, I just spent an hour going through those, so I'd say rewatch this. The real basic things are really go through and look at your content, look at your subject lines, and move it over to rich text. Those are 3 things that really not a lot of people do that can just super empower your programs. What are some of the key engagement areas we should focus on as a smaller marketing team? How can we make the biggest impact in this area? Well, first off, nurturing it, start with an onboarding and then move into a couple of different tactical programs based on what your goals are. And then make them all rich text and do them in an agile format. That way you can then start testing out different campaigns seeing which ones work. It shouldn't take you a lot of time. It should be easy to accomplish for a small team, and that's kind of what I would suggest. So thanks for asking that one, Julie. All right, next one, over to John. What are some of the most overlooked areas or types of new engagement? John, this is a silver bullet question. So my response to this is, don't think about new. You're asking about new, but what I would say is, why new? Why not ask about relevant, or why not ask about effective, right? Don't be the shiny object chaser, right? Don't be the cat wanting to just play with that shiny bell because it's new and shiny, right? Think about things. Think about maybe integrating direct mail into your nurturing program. Think about maybe using the content that you have in a new way and dynamically displaying it on your website. I mean, those are not quote unquote new, but those are much better. If you're looking at new, people are going to tell you, go to Snapchat, go to WeChat, or go to all these different, make a chatbot. That's crap, right? If you really want to get to the nuts and bolts of it, marketers are the first to adopt anything that is new because they're looking for the biggest, hottest, quickest win, right? They're looking for what's the golden nugget, what's that silver bullet where I can get all this reward for no work. That's not the way the life works. You got to put in the hard work and then know the basics, right? Just work the basics and everything will work out better for you. If you keep constantly chasing new or silver bullets, you're just always going to be in that rut of chasing silver bullets, and you're really never going to be a good marketer. You're just going to be a fad chaser. So I hate to beat you up on that, but hope that's good. All right, with that, we just kind of at the top of the time that we've got. So thank you guys so much for all of your time and listening along, and hopefully you guys can share this and catch up with us sometime in the future. So ta-ta for now, guys.